The perfect plan. The stars in the sky were quiet, like they always were before something huge happened. The galaxy had never seen a war like the one that was about to begin. Alien ships moved into position, their designs sleek and powerful. They had watched Earth for years, carefully studying every detail about the human race. They knew the planet's resources were valuable, and their leaders had decided it was time to claim Earth for themselves. The alien species that had set their sights on Earth was known as the Vorkari. They were an advanced race, powerful, and nearly unstoppable. Their empire stretched across several star systems, and they had crushed countless civilizations in their rise to power. The Vorkari believed in strength above all else. Their warships were nearly invincible, their weapons capable of obliterating entire planets in seconds. They had never encountered a species that posed any real threat to them. But humans were different. The Vorkari had studied the human race for decades, using their advanced technology to monitor the planet from afar. They knew humans were primitive compared to them in many ways. Their technology was less advanced, their weapons crude, and their population divided into small, often warring factions. To the Vorkari, humans seemed weak and fractured, ripe for the taking. Despite their arrogance, the Vorkari had underestimated humanity's resilience. They had assumed that a quick invasion would be enough to crush any resistance. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The plan was simple. The Vorkari would send their fleet to Earth, and within days, the planet would fall. Their massive warships would destroy any human defense, and their advanced weapons would wipe out any resistance. The Vorkari did not see Earth's military as a challenge. In fact, they were confident they would defeat the humans in a matter of hours. Their leader, General Kor, stood aboard his flagship, the Vorinth, watching the stars drift by as his fleet prepared for the final phase of the invasion. Kor was a ruthless commander, known for his cold efficiency and belief in the superiority of his people. He looked at the planet ahead, Earth, with a sense of pride. The Vorkari would soon add another world to their empire, and nothing could stand in their way. "We've waited long enough," Kor muttered to his officers, his voice low but filled with certainty. "Prepare the fleet. Earth will be ours before the day ends." The fleet of over 30 ships, massive, imposing vessels with weapons capable of leveling cities, moved into position. They had already disabled Earth's early warning systems from orbit, ensuring that the humans would be caught off guard. Kor had studied the human weaknesses and had made sure that no resistance could possibly stand up to them. Their plan was flawless, and they knew it. As the ships entered Earth's atmosphere, the Vorkari began to send out transmissions, broadcasting their message to the people of Earth. To the inhabitants of Earth, the broadcast began, a deep booming voice that echoed through the entire planet. "We are the Vorkari. Your world is now ours. Resist, and we will destroy you. Accept your fate and surrender. This will be quick if you comply. Your resistance is futile." The Vorkari watched with cold eyes as their message echoed across the world. They were certain that the humans, faced with such overwhelming power, would surrender immediately. After all, no species had ever dared to resist the might of the Vorkari. No species had ever won. On Earth, the message was met with shock and fear. Governments scrambled to react, their leaders unsure of what to do. Some tried to reach out for peace, offering to negotiate, but the Vorkari had made it clear that no negotiation would be entertained. The humans were too weak to even offer a challenge. But one thing the Vorkari didn't know was how humans could react when pushed into a corner. While they were technologically less advanced, humans were not without their own strength. The planet may have seemed fractured, but the people of Earth were known for something that the Vorkari could not have anticipated: ingenuity. Across the world, people began to realize the severity of the situation. They could no longer wait for leaders to act. Instead, ordinary humans, from soldiers to engineers, scientists to civilians, all began working together, determined to protect their home. In a hidden underground facility, far from the reach of the Vorkari, human engineers were working tirelessly. Their goal was clear: build a weapon that could challenge the Valkyrie's fleet. It wasn't going to be easy, and they were up against the clock. But the humans were not afraid. At the same time, military forces from every country scrambled to mount a defense. They may not have had the advanced technology the Valkyrie possessed, but they had something just as powerful: a willingness to fight for their home, their families, and their future. They knew that if they were to survive, they would have to do the impossible. Meanwhile, in space, the Valkyrie continued their relentless advance. They moved through the stars with ease, their warships cutting through space like knives. They were confident, and their arrogance was growing. They had no idea what they were about to face. General Kor paced the bridge of the Vorinth, watching the Earth grow larger on the view screen. He could almost taste the victory, the power, the triumph. But something lingered in the back of his mind, a feeling he couldn't shake. It was a nagging thought, one he ignored as best he could. "Prepare the assault teams," Kor ordered. "We strike in 1 hour." The countdown had begun. Earth was on the brink of destruction, and the Valkyrie were sure of their victory. They believed that nothing could stop them. They believed that they had Earth figured out. But the Valkyrie had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the human spirit, and that mistake would cost them dearly. As the Valkyrie fleet advanced, Earth's last line of defense was far from ready. Governments had no centralized authority to deal with the overwhelming force of the alien invaders. The world was divided, nations fractured by internal strife and old grudges. Yet in this moment of crisis, something miraculous began to unfold. The humans, despite their weaknesses and divisions, started to rally in ways the Valkyrie never anticipated. Underground bunkers, secret military facilities, and covert research labs around the globe suddenly sprang to life, as if the entire planet had been holding its breath. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and soldiers, each from different parts of the world, worked side by side in desperation. The goal was singular: to build something that could stand up to the might of the Valkyrie warships. Humanity's last hope was not in their outdated missiles or conventional weapons. They needed something far greater. In a forgotten corner of Siberia, deep in a military complex once abandoned during the Cold War, a group of brilliant minds had quietly worked for years on a top-secret project. This project was humanity's last defense, but no one knew if it would be ready in time. Codenamed Project Titan, it was a massive space-faring vessel designed with cutting-edge technology, built to withstand the harshest conditions of space and battle. It was still in its prototype stages, but its potential was immense. The project had started long before the Valkyrie invasion was even a thought. In fact, it had been the result of a collaboration between several nations after the discovery of an ancient alien artifact deep in the Antarctic ice. The artifact, found by a group of researchers in 2042, contained unknown materials and alien technology. The knowledge extracted from it led to a series of breakthroughs, some of which were only now beginning to take shape. The vessel being constructed was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of human ingenuity and survival. Meanwhile, around the world, smaller groups of resistance fighters were making desperate moves. They sabotaged alien scouting missions, engaged in guerrilla warfare against Valkyrie forces who were already landing on Earth's surface, and sent out calls for unity. The aliens may have underestimated humanity's will to fight, but they had also underestimated how the human mind could work under pressure. In the United States, military leaders were scrambling to respond. Earth's space defenses had been obliterated in the opening hours of the invasion, and most of the world's satellites had been disabled. But there was one thing they still had that the Valkyrie couldn't take away: the human spirit. The heart of Earth's remaining forces beat not in the capital cities or elite warships, but in the quiet strength of the people. Across the globe, soldiers and civilians alike set aside differences, knowing their only hope lay in unity. The first signs of resistance were small, but the ripple effect would be felt across every nation. General Kor's confidence, which had been unshakable, began to waver slightly. His fleet was advancing on Earth's capital cities, ready to crush what remained of the planet's defenses. But as his ships moved closer to Earth, strange reports began to emerge. Despite the overwhelming power at his disposal, there was one thing that seemed to elude the Valkyrie. The humans were not as weak as they had expected. Reports from his fleet's scouting parties described attacks that made little sense. Resistance fighters who, though ill-equipped, managed to inflict heavy damage to advanced alien technology. Kor laughed it off at first. Humans were resourceful, but their technology was far inferior to the Valkyries. Even if they managed to cause a few setbacks, it would only delay the inevitable. But what Kor didn't know, what no one could have known, was that humanity was about to reveal its trump card. On Earth, the countdown was drawing near. In Siberia, deep within the ice caverns of the Arctic Circle, Project Titan was ready for its first test flight. Scientists and engineers worked frantically, finalizing the launch sequence. The immense craft, easily the size of a city block, had been built in secrecy, hidden beneath layers of ice and rock to protect it from detection. It was humanity's most advanced technology, incorporating not only alien elements, but also Earth's best scientists' understanding of their own environment. The design of the ship itself was based on the ancient artifact found in Antarctica. It incorporated adaptive technology, self-repairing materials, and energy systems so powerful they could rival the Valkyrie's most advanced warships. It was not just a ship, it was humanity's symbol of defiance, a way to show the Valkyrie that they had made a fatal mistake by underestimating Earth. The ship's launch was scheduled for a time when the Valkyrie fleet was in the process of descending into Earth's atmosphere, preparing for their final assault. The humans had no intention of playing by the Valkyrie's rules. The Titan would launch without warning, taking them by surprise. The first move would be to break through the Valkyrie's outer defenses, an audacious, risky plan, but the humans had no other choice. The day of the launch arrived. In Siberia, the ground shook as the massive engines of Project Titan roared to life. The ship slowly rose from its hidden launch pad, cutting through the thick atmosphere of Earth. It was an engineering marvel, unlike anything the Valkyrie had seen before. The humans had come to fight back, and they were not going down without a fight. As Titan ascended into the heavens, the world held its breath. Every nation watched, every resistance fighter prayed. For the first time in days, there was a flicker of hope on Earth. Above, the Valkyrie fleet continued its descent. General Kor watched as Earth's surface seemed to ripple with anticipation. He was about to issue the command to destroy the planet when something caught his eye on the view screen. An anomaly. Something massive was rising from Earth, breaking through the atmosphere at a speed he had not expected. He blinked in disbelief, watching as the object grew larger and larger. "What is that?" he muttered under his breath, the question echoing in the control room. His officers scrambled to understand what they were seeing. Their sensors showed a massive, unidentified ship, one that should not have been able to reach the upper atmosphere, let alone be a threat. "All units, prepare for evasive maneuvers," Kor ordered, but it was too late. The human warship, the Titan, was now in the fight, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Titan was no longer a secret. It had appeared from nowhere, a silent giant that dwarfed anything the Valkyrie had ever seen. Its massive hull gleamed in the cold expanse of space, its engines glowing with a power that felt unnatural. For the first time since the Valkyrie arrived on Earth, they were facing something they could not easily destroy. General Kor, commander of the Valkyrie fleet, sat in his command chair, staring at the screens before him. His fingers gripped the armrests, his mind racing. The Titan's sudden appearance had thrown his entire strategy into disarray. His fleet, which had been so confident in its superiority, was now facing an unknown enemy. The Titan was not just another ship. It was a weapon, and it had been built in secrecy. It was humanity's last hope, and it was proving to be a far greater threat than Kor had anticipated. "General," one of his officers said, her voice trembling, "the Titan is locking onto our fleet. Its weapon systems are online." Kor's mind raced as he processed the information. He knew the Titan had been designed to fight, but what he didn't know was how far the humans had pushed their technology. His mind flashed back to the reports he'd received about the strange, unexpected acts of resistance on Earth's surface. The sabotage, the guerrilla attacks, the sudden flare-ups of human ingenuity. Everything now made sense. The humans had been working on something massive, something they had kept hidden from the Valkyrie. And now, it was here. Divert all firepower to the incoming threat, Kor commanded, his voice low and tight with tension. We will destroy it before it can fire a single shot. The Valkyrie fleet adjusted its formation, and a barrage of deadly energy blasts shot towards the Titan. The weapons of the alien ships were powerful, capable of wiping entire cities off the map with a single shot, but the Titan's shields flared to life, a bright blue light covering the ship's surface like an impenetrable wall. The energy blasts from the Valkyrie ships collided with the shield, creating blinding explosions, but the Titan held steady. It absorbed the energy with little more than a ripple across its surface. Impressive, Kor muttered under his breath. He had expected the Titan to crumble under the Valkyrie assault, but it didn't. Instead, it withstood the barrage and seemed to grow stronger, as if the ship itself was feeding off the energy. Return fire, Kor ordered. A series of laser beams shot from the Valkyrie fleet, targeting the Titan's exposed flanks. But before the beams could reach their target, a strange thing happened. The Titan's hull shimmered, and the lasers scattered off its surface like raindrops against a windshield. The Valkyrie's weapons were useless against it. From the command center of the Titan, Captain Ilara, the human commander, watched the battle unfold. She was a woman of few words, but her eyes burned with intensity. This was the moment they had trained for, the moment that would decide Earth's future. Her fingers danced across the controls, inputting commands as her crew worked in unison. The Titan's weapon systems activated, and she gave the order. Fire. The Titan's weapons unleashed a thunderous barrage. The massive cannons along its hull lit up, sending rippling shockwaves through space. The Valkyrie fleet had no time to react as the first round of heavy fire slammed into their ships. The blast was devastating, tearing through the Valkyrie's shields and hulls, ripping them apart with a force they could not resist. Target the flagship, Captain Ilara commanded. We take out their leader first. With precision, the Titan locked onto the flagship of the Valkyrie fleet, a massive dreadnought that loomed ominously in the distance. The Titan's weapons charged once more, and another devastating volley shot out. The energy beams sliced through the void of space, smashing into the flagship's shields. The ship trembled under the force, and for a moment it seemed as if it would hold. But the shields couldn't withstand the full force of the blast. The flagship's energy barriers collapsed, and the next round of fire punched through its hull. The massive ship exploded in a spectacular ball of fire and debris, a shockwave rippling through space. The Valkyrie fleet was stunned. They had never seen such power before, and the loss of their flagship sent a shockwave through their ranks. The remaining ships hesitated, unsure of what to do next. General Kor's face darkened with fury. "Rally the fleet," he barked. "Don't let them get away with this." But the Valkyrie's confidence had shattered. Their leader was gone, and now the rest of their fleet was in disarray. The Titan moved through space like a predator, picking off the alien ships one by one. Each shot from the Titan hit with deadly precision, and soon the Valkyrie ships began to retreat. On the surface of Earth, the people watched in awe as the battle unfolded in the skies above. News outlets broadcasted the fight live, showing the world the reality of what was happening. The humans were not only fighting back, they were winning. For the first time in days, people began to believe that Earth might survive after all. The resistance was no longer just a few scattered pockets of hope. It was a full-scale counterattack. The message had been clear. The humans would not go down quietly. As the Valkyrie fleet continued to retreat, General Kor's mind raced. He had underestimated humanity, and now he was paying the price. But there was still time. They could regroup, rearm, and come back. He had not yet used his fleet's full strength. He still had his secret weapon, the one thing the humans hadn't yet encountered. Meanwhile, aboard the Titan, Captain Ilara allowed herself a moment of relief. They had won the battle, but not the war. This was only the beginning. The Vorkari would regroup, and they would come back stronger than ever. But humanity now had something the aliens couldn't take away: hope. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the humans had proven one crucial thing to the Vorkari. They were not as weak as they had been made to believe. The victory over the Vorkari fleet had been exhilarating, but Captain Ilara knew that it was only a brief respite. The Titan, although powerful, had sustained some damage during the battle. It wasn't invincible. The Vorkari were relentless, and they would come back with more advanced strategies and heavier firepower. Earth's future still hung in the balance, and Ilara couldn't afford to get complacent. Back on Earth, the mood was cautiously optimistic. News networks broadcasted images of the Titan as it soared through the sky, victorious in its first engagement with the alien invaders. For the first time in weeks, the people had hope. However, Ilara knew better. The Vorkari weren't just going to give up because of one loss. They had resources, technology, and an overwhelming military presence. The war was far from over. Meanwhile, General Kor was seething with rage. His fleet had been shattered in the blink of an eye, and he could hardly believe the scale of the defeat. The humans had outclassed his forces in a way that was almost unimaginable. The power of the Titan had shattered their confidence. But Kor was not one to be defeated so easily. "I will not let this humiliation stand," he muttered to himself as he watched the reports of the battle's aftermath. He stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy, his eyes burning with determination. He had to regroup, to adapt, to overcome this new threat. He called his war council to a meeting. "Prepare for a final assault," Kor ordered, his voice cold and resolute. "We will use everything we have left. Earth will bow before the Vorkari." The council members exchanged uneasy glances, knowing that they were about to risk everything in an attempt to reclaim their dominance. The Vorkari were not a species to retreat for long. They were relentless, and their desire for control was unmatched. "We will launch a two-pronged attack," Kor continued, his fingers tapping the holographic map. "First, we will send a small fleet to draw the Titan away from Earth. Once the ship is distracted, we will strike at Earth's defenses with the full might of the Vorkari fleet." The plan was risky, but it was the only chance Kor had left. He was willing to gamble everything for one final chance to crush humanity's spirit. He would break them, starting with the Titan. On board the Titan, Ilara and her crew were preparing for their next move. They knew that the victory over the Vorkari fleet wasn't just a stroke of luck. It was a testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. They couldn't afford to lose that momentum. Every ship in Earth's defense fleet was being modified and upgraded with the latest technology, thanks to the Titan's advanced systems. Humanity was learning and adapting at a rate that no one had expected. But even with their progress, Ilara knew that they couldn't stand against the Vorkari indefinitely. The alien fleet was vast, and their tactics were brutal. She stood before the crew, her expression grim but determined. "We've won one battle, but the war is far from over. The Vorkari are going to retaliate, and we need to be ready for whatever they throw at us." Her words were met with nods of agreement. The crew had seen the destruction the Vorkari were capable of, and they knew that their victory had been hard-won. But they also knew that they couldn't afford to falter now. Earth's future depended on them. "We'll continue to upgrade the Titan and work with the resistance forces on the ground," Ilara continued. "But we also need to think about what comes next. We need to be prepared for a bigger fight, one that could push us to the very edge." Just as she finished speaking, a red alert flashed across the screen. A message from Earth Command appeared, displaying an incoming transmission. "Captain, "It's from Earth Command," said Lieutenant Hargrave, one of the Titan's officers. "They're reporting a strange movement in the Valkyrie fleet. They believe they are preparing for another large-scale assault." Ilara's stomach tightened. It had begun. "Alert all stations," she commanded. "Prepare for battle. We don't know what they're planning, but we'll be ready for it." Far from Earth, General Kor's fleet was already on the move. He had gathered the remnants of his forces and a new fleet of reinforcements. The Valkyrie were known for their sheer numbers, and they had a strategic advantage in terms of logistics and firepower. The fleet was massive, spanning hundreds of ships, each one armed with weapons capable of annihilating entire cities in a matter of seconds. Kor was determined to make Earth pay for its defiance. His fleet's first target was the Titan, and he had a plan to lure the ship away from Earth's defenses. Once the Titan was distracted, he would unleash a full-scale attack on the human colonies, crushing them under the weight of his forces. The humans would be left helpless and scattered, their spirit broken once and for all. The plan was simple, but it required precision. Kor's fleet would strike a small outpost on the edge of the solar system, far from Earth, to draw the Titan away. The attack would seem like a minor raid, but the moment the Titan left Earth's orbit to respond, Kor would unleash his true assault on Earth itself. As the fleet moved into position, Kor's eyes gleamed with anticipation. This time, there would be no mistakes. He had studied the Titan's weaknesses, and he was ready to exploit them. Back on Earth, Ilara was briefed about the new developments. The Valkyrie had sent a false signal, an attack on an outpost, designed to lure the Titan away from Earth. But the humans weren't fooled. "We've been tracking their fleet movements," said Lieutenant Hargrave. "It's a trap." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "They think they can trick us, but we won't fall for it. We need to stay focused." "We've got a plan," said Hargrave, pointing to the tactical display. "We'll send a small team to intercept their outpost, but we won't leave Earth undefended. The rest of the fleet will stay on alert." Ilara nodded. "This time, we won't just defend. We'll strike back." With the Titan's firepower and the cooperation of Earth's remaining forces, they would take the fight to the Valkyrie. They were no longer the hunted. They had become the hunters. The Valkyrie were relentless in their pursuit of victory, but humanity had proven itself to be a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Captain Ilara and the crew of the Titan knew that the time for subtlety had passed. There would be no more waiting or cautious tactics. The Valkyrie had made their move, and now it was time for the humans to make theirs. Ilara paced the command deck of the Titan, her mind focused on the upcoming battle. The Valkyrie fleet had assembled in a vast formation, ready to strike at Earth with everything they had. They were betting everything on this attack, convinced that they could finally crush humanity's resistance. But they had underestimated the resolve of the human spirit. "We can't let them get any closer to Earth," Ilara said, turning to her crew. "This is it. We're going to take the fight to them." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just another battle. This was the final confrontation, one that would decide whether Earth would remain free or fall to the might of the Valkyrie. Far from Earth, General Kor watched as his fleet prepared for the assault. He had gathered every available ship, every piece of technology at his disposal, and had commanded them to form a massive armada. The Valkyrie had been humiliated before, but Kor was determined to wipe away the stain of that defeat. This time, the humans would not escape. "We're ready," Kor growled as he surveyed his fleet. "We'll wipe them off the map and take control of this galaxy once and for all." His officers stood in silence, awaiting orders. The Valkyrie were not a species known for mercy. Kor's plan was simple: crush the Titan, then use their superior numbers to obliterate Earth. But deep inside, Kor felt a nagging doubt. The humans had surprised him before. But now, it was too late for second guesses. "Prepare for launch," Kor barked, and the fleet surged forward, faster than any Valkyrie ship had ever moved. The time had come for the final push. On the Titan, Ilara and her crew were ready. The engines roared to life as the massive warship moved into position, its weapons primed and ready. This was humanity's last stand. There would be no retreat, no surrender. The fight for survival had reached its ultimate moment. "Captain, the Valkyrie fleet is approaching," Lieutenant Hargrave reported, his voice tense. "They're coming in fast." Ilara nodded. "All hands, prepare for battle. This is what we've trained for." The Titan's weapon systems came online, targeting the approaching Valkyrie fleet. The ship's massive cannons hummed with power, ready to unleash devastating fire on the enemy. The crew worked in perfect synchronization, each person knowing their role and performing it with precision. "Lock onto their command ship," Ilara ordered, her voice calm despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "We take out their leadership first. If we can cripple their chain of command, the rest will fall apart." As the Titan and the Valkyrie fleet closed the distance, the tension aboard both ships was palpable. This would be the most important battle in human history. Ilara knew that a single mistake could cost them everything, but she had faith in her crew, and more importantly, she had faith in humanity's ability to rise above the odds. General Kor's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the Titan's massive form on his tactical screen. The human ship was formidable, far more advanced than he had expected. He could see the Titan's weapons primed and ready, its systems designed for one purpose: to destroy him and his fleet. But he wasn't about to back down. "Fire," Kor commanded. The Valkyrie fleet unleashed a barrage of weaponry, thousands of energy blasts shooting toward the Titan. The space around them lit up with the brilliance of the battle. The Valkyrie were relentless, their weapons packing enough power to decimate entire planets. But the Titan's shields held firm, absorbing the impact of the Valkyrie's assault. The ship shook under the barrage, but Ilara's hand never wavered on the controls. "Return fire," Ilara ordered. The Titan's weapons fired in a devastating wave. Each blast hit with precision, carving through the Valkyrie ships like a hot knife through butter. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet as the Titan's weapons tore through the Valkyrie formations, breaking apart their ships one by one. But the Valkyrie were not without their tricks. As the Titan fired, the enemy fleet began to regroup, shifting into a new formation that allowed them to concentrate their fire on the human ship. The next volley of energy blasts hit the Titan with such force that the ship shuddered violently. "We've taken damage to the starboard side," Hargrave shouted, his voice strained. "Shields are holding, but we can't take much more of this." "We have to finish this now," Ilara said through gritted teeth. "Target their command ship. We take out Kor, and the rest of them will fall apart." The Titan's cannons adjusted their aim, locking onto the command ship at the heart of the Valkyrie fleet. The moment of truth had arrived. Ilara's hands moved swiftly over the controls as she coordinated with the targeting systems. The entire crew worked in perfect harmony, focusing every available resource on taking down the Valkyrie leader. The moment they struck the command ship, Kor would lose control of his fleet. "Fire," Ilara commanded. The Titan unleashed a final barrage. The massive energy beams streaked through space, hitting the Valkyrie command ship directly. The ship's shields flickered and failed, and the hull buckled under the force of the impact. Explosions erupted across the Valkyrie flagship as it was torn apart piece by piece. Kor's voice screamed through the comms. But it was too late. His command ship was doomed, and with it, his entire fleet began to fall apart. The remaining Valkyrie ships hesitated, their coordination collapsing in the face of their leader's death. "Victory is ours," Ilara shouted, her voice filled with triumph. The crew cheered, their hard work and determination finally paying off. But Ilara's victory was bittersweet. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Valkyrie might be defeated for now, but there were still other threats in the galaxy. Humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated, but the future remained uncertain. As the Titan sailed through the remnants of the Valkyrie fleet, Ilara looked out into the vastness of space. The battle was over, but the fight for humanity's place in the galaxy had only just begun.